President Trump raising the stakes with Iran, demanding Tehran pay for deaths and damages linked to Iran's actions across the region. Iran reportedly making demands of its own, including compensation for war damages and concessions from the U.S. before it agrees to reopen the strait. But President Trump says the strait is already open with the U.S. Navy firmly in control. Watch this.
It's open now. Look, the only one that has control of the Strait of Hormuz right now is the United States Navy. We have a blockade that's been infallible. It's a steel wall. And we let people in that we want to let in, and those people come in, and they've been coming in and they're going out. So it's actually open now. We do not let them go into Iran.
Joining me now is Heritage Senior Research Fellow Steve Yates. Steve, your thoughts on where we are right now with Iran?
Well, there are some glass half full parts of where we are in the sense that I think the maximum pressure campaign has had a meaningful impact on reality inside Iran. Early military operations significantly degraded the highest priority things that needed to take place in order to buy some time and some flexibility to work through the harder parts of where this lands. But I think that it's very, very clear, at least from what's being said openly, words are not where they need to be to give an indication that a deal is coming soon. And I think in some cases, even just the flow of goods. The president's correct that we have overwhelming capability. We are in control of the situation militarily when it comes to the Strait of Hormuz, and yet we don't have numbers of ships going through as they should be if it was only Iran pinned in. And so we still have some work to do, some maintenance to do. We aren't exactly where I think we want to be, but the broad scheme of things, we have some big pieces of this puzzle in the right place.
And you have to wonder if intelligence officials have a stronger sense of what's happening on the ground in Iran, because obviously, you know, they had shut down the internet for quite a long time. I want to bring in Liz Peek. She's got a question for you, Steve.
Good morning, Steve. Yeah, what I'm hearing from someone who actually was in Iran recently is that the economy really is in turmoil, the people are starving, and that the administration, the IRGC, has brought in Taliban fighters to basically control the mobs, and they're just basically shooting anyone who is dissenting and who is attempting to disrupt the military oversight of Iran. Have you heard anything about that?
Anecdotally, there are a lot of reports about this. This is one of the great frustrations we've had after 5 months. We would expect to maybe have some Starlink terminals with greater independent access to information and get a clearer picture, because the administration has been very clear the pressure campaign on the regime is working. I tend to believe that that is true. The counterpoint to that is things that General Jack Keane and others have pointed out, that the Revolutionary Guard doesn't really feel the people's pain. They're about the revolution. And so there's a real question about where the tipping point is. How much pain do the Iranian people have to feel before the IRGC loses the capability to continue what is essentially economic terrorism, minimal strikes with maximum behavioral impact on your opponent by threatening or affecting ships, and then having these sort of propaganda campaigns that go toward their people or toward the international markets.
Meanwhile, Steve, we've got the issue of China and this Chinese national that just pled guilty to trying to buy American military technology. This is a scheme that prosecutors say was designed to get sensitive equipment into China, and Washington is reportedly grappling with depleted munition stockpiles because of the Iran war. Gaystone Institute senior fellow Gordon Chang weighed in with us yesterday about that possibility. I want you to watch this. What do you think China is thinking right now or planning, as we've had all these reports about the munition stockpiles being depleted here in the United States?
Yeah, a lot of people worry that Xi Jinping will say, let's go invade the main island of Taiwan because the U.S. doesn't have the munitions. I'm sure he would love to do that, but the point is the Chinese military is not ready to invade the main island of Taiwan, and Xi Jinping does not trust his flag officers. So that's probably not going to happen. China is going to back into a war, and although Xi Jinping may not plan it, he'll be involved in a region-wide conflict, because once he's involved, Russia's involved, North Korea's involved, Japan's involved, Australia's involved, we're involved. So this is region-wide war. And by the way, once you have the war in Ukraine, the war in Iran, and a war in East Asia, that looks like global conflict.
Steve, your reaction to what he told us yesterday?
Well, Gordon's a friend and someone with whom I broadly agree. And I think that when it comes to China's calculus, there's always the caveat of if they are rational. And if they're rational, then they would know that whatever armaments are relevant to what we're doing in Iran are very, very different than what would be used and needed in Asia-related contingencies, different geography, different distances, different mix of allies and capabilities. I think that the armaments issue is largely something that will get addressed. I don't believe it's as dire as is talked about, although we have to be responsible with what we do. And I think that we are in a better place than we've been in decades with regard to the first island chain in the Indo-Pacific. Japan is more serious in investing and developing advanced technology. The Pentagon has appropriately engaged with the Philippines, who has really sobered up about what China is doing. And China encroaching on the Philippines makes clear this isn't about internal politics in China. This isn't just about Taiwan. It's really about freedom of navigation, freedom of the people in Asia, and which model of development you really want. On that, we're doing well, but we need to do better.
All right. Well, there's certainly a lot to watch, several conflicts around the world that we continue to watch with you. Steve Yates, thank you so much for being with me this morning. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.